Is part two of a two-part run through of slides that are narrate around feedback with the theme feedback, friend or foe. So moving on to the simple SIMPLE feedback model, the S is for sensitive. Sensitive feedbacks, feedback that is given with an awareness of sometimes the discomfort that this can cause someone or the issues that could actually be provoked by it. So sensitive is the S. I is for issue related. I've emphasized this in the earlier part. Issue related being about observable, real, specific matters. M of simple is for meaningful. What's meaningful to the recipient? It shouldn't just be for the benefit of the giver. I feel better for telling you this. That's what it's not about. It's meaningful and it should be for the recipient. P within simple is prompt. Again, timely has been called in previous models. Prompt, choosing the right and fairly swift time to give the feedback after the observed event. L is for listen. Listen to what you're getting back. Listen to what the feedback is prompting. It might be you need to modify your own position based upon what you get back. So feedback is interactive. Feedback isn't just about telling people things. It's about having a conversation about the matter of interest and maybe modifying your position. And the E of simple is easy to understand. Don't make long speeches. Don't make it more complex than it need be. Make it easy to explain and to understand for the. So 7 rules now, 7 rules for giving feedback. I'll make this as brief as I can. It needs courage, it needs skill, it needs self-confidence, it needs sensitivity, it needs interest and respect, it needs the right motives, and it needs credibility. I'll just give a sentence or two on each. It needs courage. Yes, it takes a bit of bravery to give feedback. It's far easier to choose not to. So to give feedback does involve a bit of courage. What are you going to get back? You just don't know. It does take skill. I think what this is all showing is that feedback giving and receiving is a skilled process. It takes self-confidence. You've got to have a bit about you to do this. If you lack self-confidence, you'll lack credibility, which we mentioned later. Sensitivity I've mentioned earlier. Interest and respect. Yes, it does take interest and respect. It isn't, like I've said before, just about telling people things. It's about taking an interest in people. And that interest meaning I'm sufficiently interested in you that I think what I'm about to tell you, which if I choose not to, is going to be of value to you. Respect. Do the whole thing respectfully. Have the right motives. This is the 6th of the 7 rules for giving feedback. The right motives. Again, I've mentioned this previously. It's worth emphasizing. There should be a good reason for doing this, and hopefully that will always be the case. And credibility is really what this is. 8 guidelines for giving feedback. Choose the right setting. That's interesting, isn't it? Because environmentally, the physical place to give the feedback or indeed to receive it is important. Some thought going into choosing the right setting is important. Make it timely. There's that issue again. It's worth emphasizing. Frame it properly. Again, it's about saying, this is what it's about. It's not about these things, it's entirely about this. Connect emotionally. That's interesting because that's not come up previously. Connect emotionally is about saying, I recognize that this is going to provoke feelings. So being able to empathize with that, to understand it and not just say, well, what's the big fuss? Why are you taking it like that? Connecting emotionally, I think, is quite an important issue there. Listen, we've had before. Listen to what you're getting back. Take account of it, modify as appropriate. Have a plan is number 6 of the 8 guidelines for giving feedback. Have a plan. So it shouldn't just be about, I'll get you in here, I'll tell you what I see and that's it. It should be about, what are we going to do about it? How can I help you? The plan should involve more than just the giving of the feedback. Number 7 of the 8 guidelines for giving feedback is balance the negative and the positive. I think some people have how can I say this, a natural predisposition to be negative in their feedback. And I think the need to be positive more often is important. Equally, sometimes people give only positive feedback. and maybe a bit of the negative or the least welcome would be more useful sometimes. So a balance over a period of time. And lastly, of the 8 guidelines for giving feedback is make it a learning experience. It isn't a telling off. It's about saying, now, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to ensure that what I've just worked through with you is going to benefit you, is going to develop you, is going to lead to your performance being enhanced. So again, fairly swiftly, I'm going to run through 10 tips for giving personal feedback and see what's new here. Number 1, be specific. Mentioned this. Refer to observed actual events. Yes, I've been there and done that. Be constructive. Focus on ways forward and lessons learned. Just been talking about making it a learning experience. Avoid abstract comments about personality and attitudes. That's easily done. It's too easy to allow the conversation to stray into abstract comments about personality and attitudes. It's not about that. Don't try and do too much. Be realistic. That's interesting, because the temptation sometimes is to say, well, while I've got you here, let's do this and let's do that and let's do this as well. Sometimes it's best to be pragmatic, to be realistic, to be a little bit unambitious and say, well, we could have done more, but let's do this bit well. The next tip is encourage self-appraisal. It shouldn't be a one-way street. How do you feel about this? That's what I see. Am I being fair? How do you see yourself in this light? So encouraging self-appraisal, that's interesting. That's not come up before. Never get into arguments or disputes. Easily said, but need to be careful not to slip into that. Don't become an amateur psychologist and over-advise. It's too easy to think, well, yeah, I'm enjoying this. This gives me a position of power, and while I'm here, I'll just make some broad-ranging comments and about behavior and so on. That isn't your expertise typically, so stay within what you know. If change is needed, explain why and help with action plans. Yes, it's about saying, this isn't just about telling you what I see, it's about helping you to get somewhere different and better. Number 9 on the 10 tips here are be prepared to change your own approach and views. It could be during the conversation that something comes to light that causes you to think, hey, I got this wrong, or it isn't what I saw, or there's a reason for what I saw I didn't understand. The context might come out. So being prepared to change your own approach and views, I think, is important within this. You shouldn't go in with a fixed idea of, I'm going to give feedback and I'm going to give it irrespective of what I get told. And the last on this list of 10 tips is remain interested and available for further advice. That's all about the helping process that should follow. So finally, in this series of ideas and thoughts and tips I've gleaned from elsewhere, 10 golden rules for giving feedback. Give feedback on observed behaviour, not perceived attitudes. Been there, we've covered that. Describe what you saw and felt, don't make judgments. Again, emphasising the need to stay within what you saw, not to stray into attitudes, behaviour, and so on. Focus on behaviour that could be changed. That's a good one. We haven't had that before. When giving feedback, focus on behaviour that can be changed, and that requires a bit of specific thinking. It's best to go into the conversation clear about what you're looking in terms of behaviour that can be changed, and that behaviour can indeed be changed. We shouldn't ask more from people than they can give. Number 5, select and stick to the most important issues. Don't stray, stay on message. Ask questions rather than make statements. Is this fair? Is it right for me to be saying this? Do you feel that what I'm seeing is indeed what's taking place here? So questions rather than statements, so it doesn't seem like an interrogation. Set the ground rules in advance. That could seem a bit formal, and it might be in certain instances, but the ground rules could be, let's be clear why we're here. This is what it isn't, this is what it is, this is what I'd like it to lead to. That could be important. It depends entirely on the context. Another of the 10 golden rules is comment on positive issues, not just negative. Again, we've covered that many times. It's worth emphasizing because it's so important. It's the positive issues that very often provoke the best subsequent behavior. It's harder to change negative behaviors, and if the feedback is only focusing upon those, that's hard work. 3 to go. Observe everyone's personal limits, and that comes back to behavior that can be changed. Observe everyone's personal limits. I think that's worth reflecting upon again, because too often we don't take account of people's personal limits. What are they capable of? Where's the limit of what they can do differently and better? Is it different to my own? Recognizing people's circumstances and context. So observing everyone's personal limits is important. 2 to go. Stick to specific behavior. Don't waffle. Been there, done that a number of times. And lastly on this list, before offering feedback, consider its value to the receiver. Again, great advice. Before you do it, consciously, deliberately, not in a split second, think, why am I doing this? How is it going to help the person that I'm working with? And if it's not perceived as being helpful, what can I do about it? So I hope is of interest. And together with the first set of these, then I think that's quite a body of material which can be of benefit to anyone who's trying best to understand the giving and the receiving of feedback. As ever, I'm always interested to hear from people who share my interest in this issue, and you can find more about what I put out there on my YouTube channel, for instance, LinkedIn and elsewhere.